Hello, my name is Anthony Johnson. I am the field CTO at Scalar, and today I want to talk about observability and beyond. So to get started with observability, we really need to start with the challenges observability presents. And I want to look at this from a company perspective. So we start out, like most things, with where does the data come from? And ideally, if you're a company of departments, you're going to have teams, departments where this data comes from. And so, we're going to be looking at engineering. We also have our DevOps organization. This could be part of engineering. This could also be its own distinct one. The definition of DevOps is one of those fun things that we don't even know what it is. SRE, definitely a much more constrained group that we know what they do. They're watching our runtime systems, very important. We may also have our security team. And then I like them a lot, which is our network team. So we have these key teams, and we also have, of course, more data, teams all over the place. All of these teams have their own tools, they have their own areas of expertise, they have their own things that come in. So engineering may be producing data coming from applications. And so these applications are producing logs, they're producing metrics. DevOps, they may be dealing with our CI/CD concerns as an example. We may be also looking at things from databases within the company that produce data. We almost may be looking at data that comes from Kubernetes as an example. And so we go along, even into the network, we end up with things like NetFlow, which gives us lots of insights for both the network team and security as well. And we also have data coming from clouds. Everybody loves AWS, people are loving GCP. We also have Microsoft as well, all producing different types of data that we come in here. And these data keep going on and on and on. And what we want to do is we want to get something functional with all of this data that's being produced by these very opinionated teams. So our goal is to get something very useful out of them. And so the obvious thing to begin with is getting alerts. And we want to get alerts. A lot of people are wanting to do human orchestration through the idea of opening tickets. We want to be able to run ad hoc queries on these. And we also want to be able to do beautiful, beautiful dashboards on these. And just be able to make use of them. Might as well be able to integrate these with third parties as well. Be able to just make use of all this data that's coming into the system. And so to do this, we start looking at the problem and we start building sort of a solution for this. And let's go ahead and dial that in on what a solution for this would look like. And so what does it need to do? At first it needs to collect the data. And so we need to collect, we need to be able to store. We don't want to just look at this for a brief moment of time. We want to be able to look back in time. Obviously, the ability to notify is extremely important. That goes to a lot of the outputs on the right here. And we obviously need to be able to query this. And it's very important. We often look to these for analyze. And finally, let's not forget about visualizations as well. These are extremely important. And most people, when they come to this looking for a solution, they say, these are the things that I need to meet. And so, like a lot of you, I looked at this list and I settled on Elasticsearch as an example. And so I went ahead and I implemented a large system using Elasticsearch. It met all of these bullets. And I thought I was going to be done. We launched it to great fanfare. And then as I launched it, there were a lot of new sort of requirements that came up. And so one of them, as I noticed with this system, was flexibility. Basically, making sure that my writes to the system were flexible, and that my reads were flexible. And so, the next one that really came up was security. I needed to make sure that my data itself was not, could be isolated per each one of these teams, so that they felt protected in their data they were putting in the system, but we also weren't hampered with not knowing where the data is and where we can get to it. And so, we also needed to make sure that we were able to meet our performance. I look at this one as how well I can ask a question and how quickly I can get an answer from the system. We also need to worry that we can scale to make sure that you know, whether I throw 100 events or 50,000 events a second at this, I need to make sure that this system can handle that data and not, you know, hurt me on performance, not hurt me anywhere else in the system. Another really, really important one that I learned the hard way was around retention. And so being able to handle huge, massive scale for today is pointless if you can only keep around 3 or 4 days worth of data. And finally, I think the all-encompassing big one is the ability to have cost controlled. Because what ends up happening at the day is, you know, if it costs too much, that's when people start looking for other tools. So as I built this system, I do believe this represents a comprehensive list of the requirements. Some of these are functional, some of these are must-haves to guarantee that I can deliver service moving forward. And so my view though, not all of these were in my view when I selected Elasticsearch for moving forward. You know, some of these I learned the hard way when the things started to go wrong or go bad, such as, you know, I hit a CPU scale that I wasn't ready for, or I started hitting, you know, unbelievable cost. So, you know, Elasticsearch meets all of these. This is honestly what it's really, really good at. And so as we start diving into these other ones, you know, things aren't always as good as they should be. So for instance, flexibility, you know, my rights are fairly flexible. I mean, you can, you know, you have a lot of control over putting something in front of it. But the reads themselves are pretty constrained. You know, once you write something into an index, you know, your ability to change it on the fly gets into a lot of painful things that are, you know, going and actually adding scripting and things that honestly are not, you know, if you're a multi-tenant, you know, building a system for all these teams, you don't want these teams in there mucking around with things that are you know, going to make things go. So I frankly don't see them as flexible as I need to be. You know, security is kind of a similar story. While they have in their engine the ability to get things down to a field level and say this team can read this field or this team can read this index, configuring that and maintaining it, honestly, it requires that central team to go do something, and it requires this perpetual diligence that really is not necessarily that self-service or self-contained. You know, Kibana Workspaces was a great way to move forward, Kibana Spaces. But at the end of the day, this one's still a little rough. So for performance, you know, my system definitely had some challenges that I did not anticipate. While we were promised that something that would just work, it was a lot of work that had to go into it. So I'm going to mark that one also as a neutral. Scale, I had a tremendous amount of challenges scaling the system, and we're not just talking about. You know, we're not just talking about having to spin up new nodes, we're talking about outages, having to be laid up at night, and honestly, I struggle even giving that one an orange. I'm actually going to give that one a red. Retention was another big challenge that I struggled with. Basically, if you want to keep a large amount of data, it really struggled to be able to make it work. And to be honest, in these systems, you know, because retention is one of the easiest things to get rid of, to be able to cut back on cost and control cost, we actually, you know, that's the first thing that goes. And so cost-wise, while it's not as expensive as some systems, my system was still pretty expensive. We'll give that one a pink as well, because I felt like the business doesn't want to pay for this one because it's not what the business does. And at the end of the day, what the business wants is a system that delivers business questions, delivers answers to the business questions, but does so without costing a lot of money. So at the end of the day, I really did feel that I had some huge challenges, specifically with cost, scale, and retention, and I felt like I could have better performance, security, and flexibility at the end of it. This solution honestly did not work for my needs. So my solution that I built for the business, handling all this data from all these teams, be able to handle this data output, based on Elasticsearch, you know, it met these fine. But at the end of the day, it really failed on being able to give me the flexibility, the scale, the retention, the cost. And so I was at a point where I needed to be able to solve these or else I was going to fail. And so I needed a new solution. So I went looking for a new solution, and what I found was the Scalar Event Data Cloud. And the Scalar Event Data Cloud got me so excited that I actually joined the company. And the reason I joined the company was quite simple. It solved my problems. The Scalar Event Data Cloud is a cloud-native solution built for handling massive amounts of event data. It is an index-free solution, cloud-native to collect the data, to put it into a column or data store. Notifications are built in, as is all these others, to be able to store, query, visualize, and analyze the data. What's great about this system is that it allowed me to solve a lot of these problems, actually all of these problems down here at the bottom. So for flexibility for writes and reads, because it has no indexes, it's actually extremely fast for writes, and it's very, very flexible for reads, and the tooling they built in is just fantastic. For security, it's built into the product, engineered, no problem at all. Performance, one of the great things about this is that they own the performance, they own the SLA. If it's not working, I basically say, why is it not working? And they're there to help me. Dealing with scale, since I'm not dealing with infrastructure anymore, and compute and storage are not linked together, it phenomenally blows away scale. Retention is no longer an issue since all of this data is actually stored in an object store and not stored on a physical infrastructure. Retention is no problem at all. And then finally, because it's all built on cloud native infrastructure, it's not built on technology from 20 years ago. It's been engineered to be cost effective. So at the end of the day, the Event Data Cloud gives me options to solve these problems that I could not solve with the current solution. So to give a couple of examples of how the Scalar Event Data Cloud solves these problems, we'll start with cost. Because storage and compute are no longer linked together, and Scalar actually optimizes for an object store, cost becomes as efficient as possible for the data you're trying to store. There is no indexes here to just take up space that will never be occupied. It's as clean and as efficient as you can get using modern object store. As far as retention, since we're not having to build new infrastructure, retention can be as long as you want. For us, they're just data sitting in an object store. And then scale, because we're unlinked with the actual compute, we can just keep building and building and building. And because all of our customers share the same infrastructure, we get true economies of scale to be able to deliver not only your queries as fast as possible, but also your writes and your notifications into the system. And so finally, at the end of the day, for all of these teams, it all falls apart if they can't get answers quickly and efficiently. On the Scalar Event Data Cloud, 96% of our queries run in under a second. And so, that means that we're delivering answers that all of these teams need on the data they supply and really being able to supply them to the outputs they need. So the Scalar Event Data Cloud is the reason I joined Scalar. It's the reason that I am so excited because it solves the problems that I have experienced personally in my life. At the end of the day, if you are experiencing some of these challenges, or if you're designing a brand new system, I invite you to go to scalar.com to dive deeper into this solution. Reach out to me directly. I'd love to hear about your challenges to see how I can help. Thank you so much for listening. Take care.